Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Welcome to your family members as well. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you in person. Sorry, our meeting had to be rescheduled, and so I always look forward to that opportunity. But Mr. Quarles, would like to start with you, and let me just say, I think your actions in the past are important for us to figure out how you're going to pursue your roles currently that you've been nominated for. So some of the questions are going to be some of the past actions that in the work that you've done in the past. So Mr. Quarles, one of the things I want to understand that you've been a member of the board of directors at FINRA since 2015, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And FINRA is the organization that's supposed to serve as a watchdog for Wall Street. You qualify as the, quote, public governor on FINRA's board, which is the slot that's meant to represent the investing public when it comes to how FINRA operates, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay. And as the qualified as a public interest representative, you qualified even though you have investments and lines of credit from many firms regulated by FINRA, and you also serve currently on the board of directors for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce during that time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the Chamber of Commerce has repeatedly sued regulatory agencies to overturn investor protections on behalf of its Wall Street members. If confirmed to a position at the Fed, how can we trust you to balance the public interest against the interests of Wall Street, given the obvious conflicts in your current role? Can you explain that to me?
In the same way that in representing the public on the FINRA board, I have done that without any influence from or even discussion with the Chamber of Commerce. I think that it is possible to exercise responsibilities given the nature of the duties that a person has.
So when the Chamber of Commerce, which includes Wall Street, some of the Wall Street's biggest banks, and accepts their contributions, sues to overturn rules on their behalf, are you in a role of supporting those actions by the Chamber of Commerce, even though you sit as on the opposite side as a public interest representative with FINRA?
If there were any specific decision that involved a matter at which the Chamber of Commerce was a party, I would recuse myself. That has not arisen while I've been on the board.
So you've never recused yourself while you're on the board of the U.S. Chamber and or FINRA in relationship to your interactions on both?
No matters have arisen that would have required that.
Okay. And if confirmed to the Fed, will you use your position to try and stop the CFPB's arbitration rule?
I don't believe I have a role with respect to that.
So that's a no.
I haven't given any thought as to how I would affect that. The CFPB is an independent regulator and appropriately so. With regard to it, I think that the robust enforcement of the consumer rules is an important policy matter, and I certainly support that.
Thank you. Did you ever use your slot on FINRA's board to advocate for the Chamber's position on arbitration?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. My time is running low, so Mr. Otting, let me jump back to some questions and a follow-up to the conversation you were having with Senator Brown. If I understand this correctly, you said 160,000 homes were saved, and when you say 160,000 homes were saved, they were actually modified. People were able to stay in their homes. Is that correct?
They did not go through foreclosure. That is correct.
Okay. And then 175,000 non-banked, homes that were not in your portfolio were the subject of a separate modifications, or can you explain that $175,000 figure you cited?
There were 175 loans that went through the consent order look back, which was done by an independent consultant under the guise of the OCC.
Okay, and it's true that OneWest is the only bank that did not settle the independent foreclosure review, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so can you?
Well, can I ask?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
The other bank settled. OneWest Bank was the only one who completed the look back that had the actual results associated with the consent order.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me how many actual loan modifications did OneWest provide to Nevadans during your tenure while you were there? Do you know?
I do not have that number.
Okay, I appreciate that. Can you, let me just say this, as the comptroller of the currency, you're going to be entrusted with tremendous responsibility. the decisions the comptroller makes impact whether borrowers can keep their homes or whether we have another economic crisis, as you well know. And we've talked about this when we were together. And can you point to a single area where you think additional consumer protection is needed?
I think there's a lot of discussion today about small ticket dollar amounts for lending activities, and what came out of Dodd-Frank was a fairly highly complicated product that almost requires you to underwrite a $2,500 loan like a mortgage. And I think that's one area that would require a lot of input and discussion to be able to make those products available. We've kind of pushed those out of the banking sector, and I think they should be actually back into the banking sector where oversight and regulation can allow those to be offered in a fair and economic manner.
To the exclusion of the CFPB?
No, not to the exclusion and participation.
Okay, thank you. I notice my time is up. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Otting, in your answers to Senator Tester, did I hear right that you said that OneWest did not engage in robo-signing?
I said when I answered the question that there could have been errors, they weren't identified in the robo-signing, but our process is in place. And again, what I comment on is that I think a lot of people have different definitions of robo-signing. Mine is, did we have a process for the affidavits? Second of all, did anybody sign any affidavits of another person's names? Third, was the data checked before somebody was, signed the affidavit? And lastly, was the notarization process done? And I would respond that we did do those at OneWest Bank accurately. There may have been exceptions. I'm not aware of those exceptions, and they weren't identified as any issues in the interim OCC report that reported our results.
Okay, here's my concern, and very briefly, I have in front of me the consent order between the Office of Thrift Supervision and OneWest.
Right.
And specifically, it states that OneWest Bank engaged in unsafe or unsound banking practices relating to mortgage servicing and the initiation and handling of foreclosure proceedings. Specifically, those unsound practices included filed or caused to be filed in state and federal courts or in local land records offices, and this happened in Nevada, numerous affidavits or other mortgage-related documents that were not properly notarized, specifically that were not signed or affirmed in the presence of a notary, litigated foreclosure and bankruptcy proceedings, and initiated non-judicial foreclosure proceedings without always ensuring that the promissory note and mortgage document were properly endorsed or signed, and if necessary, in the possession of the appropriate party. That is robo-signing. That is what is in this consent order that says that you have done.
Accusations that were made, if you'll know, we did not confirm or deny. You have to look at the results that came from the.
Then why did you sign the consent order? If you didn't agree with the decision.
You ever had to sign a consent order?
Actually, I was
No, I'm
Attorney
just
General of the
asking,
state of
you
Nevada.
basically do not have a choice. When the
So you're
regulators-
telling me that
have
your
a choice.
company did not engage in this, but you were forced under duress to sign this consent order?
I hope you are never in the position that I was. I had great pride. I had been at that company a little less than a year, and I would argue I had to, for the benefit of our employees, sign that consent order that when I did not agree with what was described. The words that were inserted in there were do not confirm or deny. I think I would encourage you to look at the results that were produced in 2014. I'd be happy to get those over to your office. I think it paints a different story of OneWest Bank.
If you didn't engage in the practices, then you shouldn't have signed the consent order,
I
Mr.
wish
Otting.
it-
But
wish it was
I
that
appreciate
easy.
your
I wish
comments.
it was
Thank you
that
very
easy.
much. It was very instructive.